Hi everyone, welcome back to this week Lightning Talk. I am Ilam, product engineer at Nolte, and I'm going to talk about web animation. So first, what's the definition of animation? Animation is not the art of making drawings move, but the art of drawing movement. So based on the persistence of vision, animation is an illusion of fluid movement. And when it comes to web, good animation will make the user's experience better. This can be fun, a positive experience, or just making a site easier to use. We can't talk about animation without talking about Disney. And we refer to Disney greats not because they tell us how to make cute characters dance around, but because they teach us how to have finite control over movement. There is 12 basic principles of animation that were introduced by Disney animators in their book, The Illusion of Life, which is now considered the Bible of animation. So it was originally intended to apply to traditional hand-drawn animation, but the principles still have great relevance for computer animation and motion graphics. So let's know the basics. First, squash and stretch. Squash and stretch gives animation flexibility, gravity, weight, and mass. When an object is in motion, it doesn't remain the same shape. In web design, squash and stretch is used if there is an object that needs to look like it has physical mass. 2. Anticipation. Anticipation prepares the viewer for what's about to take place. Example, when you want to jump, well, you first bend your knees. In web design, anticipation is used in transition, or, for example, shrinking items slightly and then make them get bigger and hover. 3. Staging. Staging leads the viewer eye so that they look where you want them to look. For example, when a pop-up comes up on a web page, the animation of the pop-up makes you focus on it, and the rest of the page is all blurred or covered. So you are telling the user, this is where I want you to look at right now. 4. Straight ahead and pose to pose. Straight ahead and pose to pose are two different ways to create animation. With straight ahead, frames are created from beginning to end. The animation is more fluid and dynamic. With pose to pose, the first and the last frames are created. Then the necessary in-between poses are added. So as we are using keyframes in web animation, the use of computers can fill in the missing in-between poses automatically. So you don't have to worry about drawing the in-betweens. So the pose-to-pose approach is more relevant. 5. Follow-through and overlap in action. These principles says that when an object is in motion and then stops, parts of the subject will move and stop at different rates. Things don't come to a stop all at once. First there is one part and then another. 6. Slow in and slow out, also known as ease in and ease out. An object starts moving slowly, gains speed, and then slows down again as it comes to a stop. Ease out is from slow to fast, and ease in is from fast to slow. Well, in web animation, it's preferred to use custom easing option, like the cubic Bezier in CSS, to stay in control of motion. Because limiting yourself to only ease in and ease out limits your animation capacity for expression. 7. Arc. Objects usually follow some type of arc as they move because of gravity. So if they were to remain straight, the movement would be mechanical. So if you want like a very lifelike motion, make the object follow an arc, unless you want it to be mechanical. 8. Secondary action. A secondary action emphasizes the main action without distracting from it. Adding secondary action to the main action gives the scene more life and can help to support the main action. For example, if you have, I don't know, a pop-up coming out or a model and it moves quickly and maybe the content that's inside the model can move at a slightly different rate, so it gives, it gives a plus to the animation. 9, timing. Timing refers to the number of drawings of frames for a given action. It's basically the speed of the action. Timing also helps the viewer understand the weight of the objects in relation to one another. Light objects react faster than heavy objects. 10. Exaggeration. A perfect imitation of reality can look static and dull. So exaggeration is used to make characters and objects more interesting. In web design, objects are scaled up or down to draw or detract attention. So when a user is active on a certain part of the website, it can grow while other elements can shrink. 11. Solid drawings. The principle of solid drawings means taking into account forms in three-dimensional space or giving them volume and weight. Not really relevant in web design. I would say solid drawing could be just very good UI design. 12, the last one, appeal. Appeal in a cartoon character corresponds to what would be called charisma in an actor. So a character whose appealing is not necessarily sympathetic. Villains or monsters can also be appealing. So the important thing is that the viewer feels the character is real and interesting. In web design, appeal would probably mean that the website is engaging and enjoyable. Persistence of vision. Animation works by using an optical illusion, presenting a sequence of still images in quick enough succession. It's like those flip books where you draw on each page and flip it quickly to create motion. Well, the frame rate is the speed at which those images are shown, or how fast you flip through the book. The speed at which they are shown tricks your brain into perceiving smooth motion. Movies or TV series are usually at 24 FPS. This frame rate is similar to how we see the world and creates a very cinematic look. Videos with a lot of motion, like sports or even video games, they will have a higher frame rate because there is a lot happening at once, and the higher frame rate keeps the motion smooth. Well, it is highly recommended to hit the 60 FPS in web animation, but why? Because most devices today, they refresh their screen 60 times a second. And if there is animation or transition running, the browser needs to match the device refresh rate and put up one new frame for each of those screen refreshes. So how do we do that? Well, animating properties like position, scale, rotation, and opacity is pretty safe for your performance. But if you animate anything else, the chances are that you are not going to hit 60 FPS. So you have to take care that your animation don't cause performance issues and ensure that you know which CSS property changes are expensive. And for that, well, you need some planning. Storyboarding is good for planning your animation. A storyboard is a visual representation of still pictures of what your animation will end up being. Now, I just put like an example here on the slide of a high definition storyboard. So a web animation storyboard can look like this and help illustrate precisely what CSS properties will be required, the transformation in scale, the change in color, and how long the animation should last. So this will help planning all animations and check for possible performance issues. So you can make the decision of animating the component or not, or asking yourself if this animation is really useful for the UX. Now, when to use animation in web? Well, the first reason to use animation is to increase usability. So simple animation can be great guiding tools to help people understand on what buttons they should click or where to go next in a website. The animation you create should add something positive to the user experience and not distracting from it. So usability comes in a few forms. It can be communication function or how to use a website, show change, such as filling in the form correctly or highlighting an element that an element is clickable, or create a flow or direct users to a call to action. Now, the second reason to use animation is just visual, to have something nice to look at. Sometimes the goal of an animation, of an animated element, is just to add visual interest and keep a user engaged for a longer period of time. So in summary, the animations you create should add something positive to the user experience. And if you think your animation might distract users or cause performance issue, then it's okay to choose not to animate it. And that's it. Thank you very much. And if you have any question, please post it directly on the YouTube channel. Okay. Hector says, a very important subject that we often forget to implement in our projects. Thanks for this talk. Thank you. Any questions? Really interesting topic. Congratulations. Thank you, Nelson. Daniel is asking, which do you think is the optimal way to give developers specs of an animation? Well, that would be just the way I show you for the storyboarding. Let me show you again. This one, I think it's the best way, like to tell exactly which CSS property will be changed, if it's going to be some scale, if it's going to be a change of color, and which color we are going to change. If you are going to change background, if it's going to move, things like that. So you can really plan, and also the state when it's clicked, when it's on hover state, and I think it can help planning the whole thing and see if it's going to be expensive or not, for the performance, and then decide alongside with the UX UI designer. I think it should be a collaboration between the two, and decide, okay, this is really important for UX because I think there is a risk that it might slow the website down, or I don't know. So we can make decisions together, and I think it's the best way. Any other question? Hector is asking, do you think that the success of some very popular apps could come from the feeling of using the animated interfaces? I think so, yes. It's always more enjoyable when you have a website that is animated and well animated. I mean, it's not distracting you, but the user flow, it's guiding you through a certain user flow. Like the animation is guiding you, so it makes the user experience much more enjoyable than just a static website. So definitely. Nelson is asking, going more technical, which is better in terms of performance, CSS animation, or using some library like GSAP? Well, GSAP is known to have a very good performance. Now, when to use CSS animation and when to use JavaScript animation, it's very tricky debate. And what I think, honestly, I don't like to have very complex animation in CSS. So if you want to animate just a state or toggle, hover, a very simple transition, use CSS. Then if you have something more complex, and if you need to use control like stop the animation, pause the animation, play it, that might be trigger, on a click button, it would be better to use JavaScript. GSAP is very, I really like GSAP because it has a very good performance. It's also supported by most browsers, and it's really, really easy to use. You can do a lot of things using GSAP in very few lines of code, that if you use the web animation API, for example, you will have maybe twice or 3 times lines of code. Okay, Oscar is asking, do you think you should master some physics or geometry to create a good animated object, or animating libraries handle all of that for you? Physics or geometry? Yes and no. I mean, you need to have a good understanding of motion and how it works, of course. But I think with all the animation principles I just explained, if you understand those ones, then you will be good to go. I mean, this is the most important. And I mean, animation is very old. Web animation is young, but animation is really old. And there is decades and decades where great animators, they've been improving the techniques, and they've put all that together in 2 amazing books, which is The Illusion of Life, and the other one that I think is really good is the Richard Williams, The Animator's Survival Kit. And if you read those 2 books, you'll be fine. I mean, you have all the basic knowledge to be a great animator. Any other question? So Hector is asking, where can we start if we come from engineer background and never touch any visual tools? You can start by that, by understanding animation, like just I said, like the principles. When you understand the principles, when you understand frame rate, when you understand what animation is all about, then you can start to code. I mean, sometimes when I see, people teaching web animation, they start by CSS, and they teach you, okay, this is CSS transition, this is CSS animation, this is keyframes. You don't, sometimes web developers, they don't even know what's a keyframe. I mean, what really is. And they don't know that animation is usually 24 FPS, but maybe in web 60 FPS. They don't understand that kind of they don't have that kind of knowledge. And sometimes they use ease in or ease out, and they don't really understand the visual concept of what it is, easing in and easing out. So I guess that you must know some kind of basics of traditional animation, and then you can start coding. Any other question? No? Okay. Well then, thank you very much. Oh no, we do have a question. Katya is asking, what about accessibility and animation? What can we do when they become an obstacle for some users? So just as I said, if your animation is not good for UX, don't use it. It's as simple as that. I mean, if you just, I mean, you can't animate just to animate. Since I want animation in my website and I will put a lot of animation. No, if animation doesn't have a purpose, if it doesn't help, don't use it. Any other question? Katya is saying, what if the client really, really wants it? Well, then you have to tell the client that it might cause an issue. But and if they want it anyway, well, So Daniel is asking, when do you think a team should start talking about animation while building a digital product from the start in development phase? I think it should be just after the UX UI design. I mean, part of it, and just before development, because once you design a website, and you can, part of the UX flow, you can choose to have some animated component, and then with the help of a developer, animators, like you can check, like with a storyboard, like I show, which CSS properties we are going to animate, and if it's going to be cheap for performance, or if it's going to be expensive, and if it's really useful or not, and if it really serves the UX. So I think it should be part of the UX UI design process just before development. So Nelson is asking, based on the Katya's question, if we need to create a full animated website, should we create another basic site for accessibility? That's a very good question. That's a very good question. I don't know. I honestly don't know, but this is nice. I investigate that. Okay. Actor saying it's most complicated, but you could turn the animations off. Could be a possible solution. But and I think it's a very good question. I can't reply right now. Any other question? No. Okay then. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.